minutes late. We had a special meeting before this meeting, a joint meeting with the airport commissions. It was a public meeting, and you're all welcome to come in when we have those meetings with the commissions. There's no need to give a report on what was done, but because that meeting went till 7, we're about 5 minutes late getting started on the regular meeting. We'll ask the city clerk to call roll.
Council Agency Member Durham. Present. Lingle.
Here.
Rouget. Here. Mayor Pro Temp Vice Chair Cecilia Martiner. Here. Mayor and Chair Mike Saminsky.
Here. Please stand for the invocation. Is our
Our Father and our God, we thank you for this day, for your blessings. Thank you, Lord, for bringing us here. We pray that as we go into this meeting, that you may be with us. Bless us as we make decisions that will affect the citizens of this city. Thank you, Lord, for everything you do for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Follow me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Seated. Next item is the City Administrator and Executive Director's status report.
Mr. Mayor, Council, and Lompoc citizens, the City Administrator's status report includes an update from the Lompoc Fire Department for January activities, noting department responded to 301 emergency calls, 15 fire-related, 201 rescue medical emergencies, and 85 other related. And also on my status report is a letter from Mr. Dan Lambe of the Arbor Day Foundation, congratulating the City of Lompoc on our forestry program, and for the 8th year naming the city electric utility a Tree Line USA utility in recognition of national leadership in caring for trees while meeting service objectives. I commend Utility Director Ron Stassi, the Lompoc Electric Division, Parks, Recreation, and Urban Forestry Director Dan McCaffrey, and Urban Forestry Manager Cindy McCall for their leadership and receiving this national recognition from the Arbor Day Foundation for our forestry program. And that is all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff requests and announcements.
Mayor, I have a couple, if you would.
Yes.
There's 3 items on your agenda this evening that need a little different attention. The first item, item 9, is a public hearing that's for a proposed apartment project. That is being continued or being requested to be continued because the applicant has made that request because they have a scheduling conflict. So it would be continued until April 6th. And what we should do is either move it up to the front of the agenda right now and open that public hearing and continue it to April 6th, or when that item comes up, item 9 comes up on the agenda, then open the public hearing and continue it to April 6th. If there's anyone here to speak on that item tonight, they're welcome to speak tonight, but just understand that it may be better if you come back on the 6th because there'll be more attention given to it then. Another item that needs a little bit of discussion is item 10. The LHCDC Executive Director has asked for that item to be continued. That's the loan extension item. That item involves a contract for a loan from the agency, the LHCDC, so it's within the agency's discretion on whether or not to continue that item. So you may want to talk about continuing or not when that item comes up on the agenda. And then the last item, item 12, Mr. Wilkie has asked for the lease purchase matter that was on the agenda to be pulled from this evening's agenda because there's going to be a little more analysis and then it'll be brought back to you at a future meeting.
You're recommending, as each item comes up, we open the item and then extend it?
Yes.
Continue. Okay. Thank you. Later. No, it will be at this time. Council, Redevelopment Agency requests and announcements. The first item is one that was requested last time. We'll hear that one first and then go into any other comments that we may have. Arlene Pelster, do you want to bring forward this? This is a request that was made as a result of public input at the last meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Property owner Morris Sabani has expressed an interest in leasing space in his industrial project on the east side of town to a wine tasting room. And currently our zoning ordinance in the industrial zoning districts allows accessory uses such as tasting rooms to be limited at 15% of the gross floor area. And prior to the previous council meeting, the staff had met with interested parties to discuss an amendment to the zoning ordinance. We have researched how other agencies regulate such facilities, and we had determined that such uses could be regulated either via conditional use permit, an overlay district, or a combination thereof. But I think we know where we can go with this to accommodate tasting rooms in the industrial district. After the last council meeting, Mr. Savani came in and saw me and submitted an application for a text amendment to our zoning ordinance. It was submitted on February 19th, and we've already worked on beginning the process for that. So we now have everything we need to proceed with changing the ordinance to allow tasting rooms in the industrial district. The schedule you can expect is that it would go to Planning Commission on April 14th. If the Commission makes its recommendation on that date, Council would see it for its first review on May 18th. If you were to approve it that night, the first reading could occur on that date. The second reading could occur on June 8th, and the ordinance could then be effective on July 8th of 2010. We don't anticipate delay on this, but if there were changes to the application or any extra time taken by the reviewing parties, there could be a delay. So we're proceeding forward with this. Like I said, we have everything we need, and I remain available for questions.
Could you repeat again the day you think that will come to council?
May 18th?
May 18th.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions, Mr. Rouget?
Ms. Pelster, the timeline for this, how is that determined?
Basically, we have to do a negative declaration that's required by the city's environmental review guidelines. There's a 20-day notice mandated by state law. Then there's a public hearing notice mandated by state law for Planning Commission. There's another hearing notice mandated for state law for the council hearing. Then, pursuant to California law, you have to do a first and second reading of the ordinance. Then it takes 30 days to take effect. So we've got it compressed as fast as we can while still meeting the noticing requirements.
Right. So it's all state law. There's no way to expedite this.
If I had a way to do it faster.
Yeah.
Mrs. Martin.
I need a little clarification on that. Between the Planning Commission on April 14 and the Council on May 18th, there is over a month, and you're saying that there is a state law requirement that says what specifically?
That's the time it takes us to get the lead time to get it in the Lompoc record, to meet the public hearing notice, and assemble all the necessary documentation for you to review on the 18th.
That's the minimum amount of time?
Yeah, that's as fast as we can push it.
Meaning the city, or I mean, you can call the Lompoc record tomorrow and have a notice. I mean, I want to understand exactly the requirement. How are you establishing that that's the number of days that are needed?
I think our city attorney can help.
Specifically with regard to the notice, unfortunately, a case came out maybe about a year ago. There were some communities that would publish notices for the Planning Commission, the City Council on the same notice because that saved time. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there was a court decision that came out maybe a year ago that said you can't do that because the public hearing notice needs to be, for the City Council, needs to occur after the Planning Commission takes its action so that the public knows what the council will be considering.
Yeah, we used to do it that way.
And it takes 7 days to get this public notice out? Or how many days does it take to get, once the Planning Commission has made a decision, how many days does it take you to get a public notice out?
Usually, the Planning Commission makes a decision, and then the following day we put the notice together, and it takes, I think, Donna, don't we have to turn it in usually on Tuesday to get a notice published in time for the next meeting? So it takes 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
Mr. Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Pelzer, I was wondering, there are currently a couple businesses in the wine ghetto that are slightly out of compliance. Mm-hmm. Can we request that some lenience be given to these current property holders until we've cleared this all up?
Yes, certainly.
Okay. Would we need the entire council to approve that, or?
I think from a logistical matter, we would do it anyway, since we are pending a change, and then we would talk with those business owners whether they're interested in pursuing a tasting room under the provisions of the new ordinance.
Okay, so we're not going to force anyone out at this point. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, the agenda is a recommendation that the council direct staff to process the application, but I think I've heard that it's already started and it's underway and the schedule's all done. So I think this is not an approval of the request tonight. This is merely an action and advice that the item is going forward. As you've heard, you'll have your chance to comment to the Planning Commission in April, and then to council in May, well, whether it's approved or not, I guess, of the Planning Commission.
Mayor,
So,
just for clarification on the record, the reason the staff report was written that way with that recommendation was just because the council had expressed some interest in wanting to show their support behind it, so that's why it was set up as having the council make a recommendation.
I don't know that there's a need for public comment on this, but we will, if anybody would like to comment on it at this time, it's merely the first step going forward. Okay.
John Lynn, resident City of Lompoc. I just want to say that having just gone through all these processes, I am so glad to see that you are doing this as a overlay district rather than a CUP, because every single thing we did for the CUP, we then repeated on steroids for the ABC. And one of the recommendations I would make for the future is that we go through all of our sections in the city and take alcohol licensing as out of the CUP and make them permitted uses, because the ABC runs you all through the same thing again, and it all comes back to the city again, and the city has to prove it all over again, and it would take a lot of time out of it. So this is the right way to do it for this and for other areas. Thank you.
Mr. Lynn.
Mayor, members of the council, Denny Anderson, Lompoc Valley Chamber of Commerce, and I just have a follow-up question that was asked of Ms. Pelster in terms of easing up on the, or that Mr. Lingle asked about easing up on the requirement as we're moving ahead with the text amendment. How would that impact people who are new people who are interested in moving in? Could they be accommodated in that same manner? That's a question that's come to us that I don't have an answer to. Thank you.
After public comment, we'll ask if there's a comment on it. Mr. Holmdahl?
Wayne Holmdahl, City of Lompoc, council and mayor and all. Richard Longoria moved in there 10 years ago. At that time, I was talking in the back, and nobody expected to see what happened in 10 years' time. Next came Sideways, and that's when it also bloomed in the Santa Rita Hills. And what's coming into Lompoc is one of the only industries that is growing. They're the only ones that have moved into new buildings or built new buildings. And this came forward, and it's nobody's fault. It was the way it was come through, as we talked about. We looked at this land over the last 12, 14 years, exactly where to go with it. And he had other plans, and then the wine industry come in. So you're heading the right direction. I know you like to go fast, but state law and other laws have that in there, and I think you're going the right direction. We have people in here that are coming in. And like I say, the last count I had, we had 9 tasting rooms open on Saturday. We got 20 wineries, and we got more wanting to come to town, and they're still going to come to town. And I think what you're doing here as a council, putting this together, and with the industry and everybody else, very much supportive of what it's all about. And I think this is excellent, and I was real happy to see what was in the paper. I missed the last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmdahl. No other questions? No other comments? No one rise. We'll close public comment period. Mr. Pannoni, did you want to answer the question that was asked?
Yes, with regard to whether or not the city somehow can relax its standards for people who aren't yet there to come in. That's not possible. The only reason that there's some leeway being given is because there are people that are currently there. They're there illegally. but the city has the option on whether or not to prosecute that quickly or prosecute it and give it a stay, if you will. Since the process has already started for the amendment, there's really no reason to go after those people right now. In addition to that, you're never really sure what will ultimately be approved or the process or the specifics, so letting someone come in now without knowing those specifics that isn't already there would not be a wise choice, in my opinion, nor do you really have the legal authority to just waive that requirement.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. Lingle?
Well, if there's no other comments, I was just going to move that we ask staff to proceed with the work going forward.
I second.
Okay. Did you have a comment, Mr. Durham? All right. We have a motion. We have a second. Let's vote. So the motion is to go forward. We'll move to oral communication. So the motion is to go forward. We'll move to oral communications.
Hold on just a second. I would like to make one comment, but I want to applaud staff for putting the time and effort in this from the last council meeting, because it was an issue that came up and was very strongly voiced throughout the community, and so I applaud the staff here at the city for doing that.
Mr. Durham.
Mr. Mayor, it's our turn to have council
Oh, I'm sorry. You're
request
right.
announcement. May I proceed?
Yes, please do.
I've written a statement that I've been thinking about for the last 2 weeks after the council meeting 2 weeks ago concerning our handbook and the invocations. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read this. I've thought about it a long time, and I'm calling it Words. We humans are very fortunate. We've been given some great gifts. One of these is the ability to speak and use words to express ourselves. Words can be used to express opinions, thoughts, and feelings. Such was the case at the last council meeting on the subject of our invocations, which are spoken at the beginning of each of our meetings. This is a tradition that's been going on for a very long time. In recent years, we've been slowly challenged on the appropriateness of this tradition. In our efforts to be politically correct in the last few years, we've been required to consider all belief systems and to encompass everyone's beliefs, and that's quite a job. The tradition of an invocation has been challenged in the courts, and several different rulings have come down to us. During the discussion 2 weeks ago, the issue was how to follow the laws which have been set up by this court system and also to satisfy our own religious community. This was practically a no-win position for us sitting up here on the council. No matter which opinion or mindset we followed, we were going to get criticized. Not a very happy situation in which to be put. This isn't the first time we've been in this kind of a spot. We listened to all the opinions, and yes, I personally did listen to all of them and made our decision on the best information we had. I personally made an error in my comments and apologize if I offended anyone. I was not trying to discount the opinions expressed, but was trying, with a poor choice of words, to let everyone know we're responsible for the total community of Lompoc, and we're walking a very thin line. With this in mind, I would like to ask my other council members that we agendize this matter about the invocations and add 1 or 2 words to the paragraph in the handbook which would clarify the words to be used. And I will need 2 other council members to approve agendizing it again.
Do we have others that want to agendize? Put this back on the agenda?
I just have a question for clarification. Why are we agendizing it again?
Because I want to add a couple words to the statement that we have in the handbook that I voted on it, actually. And I think it would add clarification to the people that are giving the invocation.
Okay. You don't want to share those words with us right now?
Well, non-sectarian prayer.
Okay.
It says inspiring words of inspiration. And I wanted to add non-sectarian prayer or words of inspiration. That's what I wanted to add.
Mr. Mayor.
Do we have
I have a comment.
We don't even, unless we get a second on the motion before us, we don't even discuss it. So is there a second?
Well, I have something.
For purposes of discussion?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Now it's open for discussion and comment.
I would like to, one of the issues that I felt when this agenda item was brought up to the council was that the clergy that had a statement felt that the process was not to their liking, meaning that we had to discuss here in public a different option, and that option was not discussed with the clergy. If we're going to go through this process again, I will strongly encourage this council and the staff and the legal counsel to have a conversation with the clergy, which were the first organization, agency, if you wish, that came with a proposal. I don't want to go through the same process and have the clergy be feeling that they were not included in this process. So if we're going to agendize it, I would like to have the staff, the legal counsel, meet with the clergy association before it comes up to the council, hopefully come out with words that they all agree with, that everybody's in consensus with, and then it comes up to the council for further approval. I would encourage Councilmember Rouget to participate in that meeting. Certainly we cannot have more than 1 or 2 council members there because of the Brown Act. But really, I don't want to see the same thing happen again. I am willing to approve, I'm willing to second to put it on the agenda item if we're willing to go through a different process than what we did the last time. Thank you.
Mr. Durham.
Well, that was the concern that Councilmember Martiner just explained. On the 17th of last month, I think it was the 17th, we had a meeting, or I had a meeting with several of the clergy in this community of various faith, and that was the issue. They felt that their voices wasn't heard prior to it coming to council, and I explained to them how that evolved, and I think that they would very much willingly attend, and I agree that Councilmember Rouget and another member of the council should attend and have this meeting before it's actually put on the agenda. That way we do have the voices of the community speaking to us.
What you want is serial meetings. I'm going to ask that be reviewed. You want the council members to meet. A couple of you have already met. Now you want a couple other council members to meet. And I think that is just as much a violation of the Brown Act as if all of us meet at one time. You can't have serial meetings either with the parties, just because they're talking to only 1 or 2 at a time, and then while talking to 1 or 2 to try to develop an issue. Am I right, Mr. Pomoni? Or
if I understood what was being suggested, council was going to give direction that 2 of your members were going to meet with, I'm not sure who of the clergy or what groups, but some group, either a group or groups, I'm still not sure. That would not be a violation of the Brown Act. In fact, each council member, if they wanted to, could meet with a group, because that's what the political process permits. The slippery slope that you get into is if that group then communicates what 3 council people said to each other, or the other council members, or if the council themselves talk to their colleagues. That's the slippery slope that you get into. That's why what we readily recommend is it's better not to have council members meeting directly with applicants. In this case, what I'm hearing is the council recognizes that's a problem. And what I'm hearing is 2 council members are going to meet with the group, again, I'm not sure which groups, and those council members aren't going to talk to anybody else. And the other 3 council members are going to ask those council members any questions, and the clergy who attend that meeting aren't going to come talk to the other 3 council people to let them know what happened at that meeting.
Mr. Lingle.
You know, I'd love to have this agendized again if I thought the outcome would be different. I don't see where we're going to have a different outcome. I see where we're going to change a couple words. The outcome will still be the same. Well, it may be the same. You know, I did meet with the clergy prior to the last meeting. They presented what they thought they wanted to see in the policy. We chose not to go with their recommendations. I just don't see where this is going to change anything, Ms. Roger. So if you get another second, I mean, we'll take it, but I would not be in favor of bringing it back at this point.
Okay, are there any more lights on? Okay, we've got. I'll vote in favor of the motion. There were comments on people that their voices were not heard, and I'll bring it back for another discussion rather than the next meeting. In order to allow the time for the suggested meetings, suggest that maybe we bring it back to the first meeting in April.
That's fine.
We have a motion on the floor to bring it back on the agenda.
If I could just ask for clarification, who is it that the council as a body wants the 2 council members and staff to meet with?
I think 3 members have already met with the clergy, so it would be Mr. Roger and myself that will try to find time to meet with them. If that's
Well, my question is perhaps we don't need 2 council members. Perhaps we only need 1. The original, I mean, you know, the only reason why I suggested a council member is because there is a specific request with a specific language that needs to be communicated to the clergy. It can be communicated at the meeting, or staff can communicate it, or whatever. That's really the only reason. I essentially don't feel that it's necessary for council members to be there. The staff and the clergy could meet, but if you want to, you can have them as long as we don't violate the Brown Act. None would be as good.
okay. The motion, I think, is just to agendize it, to bring it back.
That's what the motion is. But
And
I'm also hearing
it was a recommendation that we have the private meetings before it does come back, which I'm agreeable to. But I didn't hear that as part of the motion.
I would only vote for the motion if we make sure that this meeting occurs. So I would like to amend the motion that the staff is going to meet with the clergy before the agenda item comes to the council.
Would you accept the amendment, the motion? We have an amendment.
I accept the amendment.
We have
Mayor, I'm sorry, I need clarification, because I'm assuming that it's by the staff, you mean the city administrator and I are going to meet. I need to know who it is the council is asking us to meet with. Is it the group that gave us the proposed language for the agenda? Is it another group, or is it we send an invitation to every clergy member in the city and ask them to come on a particular date and we meet with them?
Councilwoman Martin.
The complaints about the process that I received were on the organization that brought the proposal in the first place. So I can only speak for those. So my recommendation is to include them this time in the process of going back and forth as to what is the proper language to bring up to the council. That's all I know at this time, and I don't know of any other groups.
Is that acceptable, Mr. Malone? Okay. Laurel, do you have a question or comment?
No, it's just, I just want to confirm that City Attorney Pannoni and myself, we will set up a meeting with the Ministerial Association and then come back to you at a future date.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to be able to attend that. And I think Councilman Rouget would like to attend that. Okay, we have a motion as amended. Let's vote. Passes 4-1. Are there any other council requests? Are there any other, Mr. Durham?
A couple of announcements. Last Saturday night, the Lompoc Fire Department, or actually the Lompoc Firefighters Foundation, held their 5th annual Fire and Ice Ball. And I want to thank this community with all my heart for everything they did for that event. It was a packed house. It just shows that we do care about the men and women that serve our community and are willing to lay down their lives for us. When you go to these activities, you can see how much they appreciate it as well. I'd also like to say that on Sunday, the Lompoc Rotary had an outstanding wine tasting and auction at the Veterans Memorial Building. It was definitely standing room only. I'm not sure where the monies will go this year from the Rotary, but I do know that over the years, the Rotary has donated thousands of dollars to different organizations in this community, and this is one of the big events that helps contribute to that. So I applaud the Rotary. Tomorrow, you've heard me talk about the Welcome Them Home program. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. at Halama Cafe, there's going to be a meeting for that program. I'll be present. Mr. Rick Diaz is the coordinator of the program, and Halama Cafe has graciously been one of the big contributors to the program. If you enjoy your freedoms that you have today, get involved with this program. Let these men and women know that their duty overseas or even in our own land is very much appreciated. Also, on March 6th, if you're tired of seeing the graffiti around town, come out and bring your grubs and join us at the Lompoc Police Department in the back parking lot at about 8:45 a.m. That's Saturday morning. And we're going to go out for about 3 hours and do some painting. So that would be I'd love to see about 250 people out there. So thank you.
Mr. Durham. Mr. Lingle.
Yeah, 2 comments on Mr. Durham's comments. One, do we have a time for the welcome home? You mentioned it was at Halama Cafe. Do we have a time?
Yeah, Councilman Lingle, that'll be at 3 p.m. tomorrow afternoon.
3 p.m. Okay, and then the other thing, the proceeds from the wine tasting from the Rotary will go towards the Veterans Memorial Building. Specifically, I believe it's to improve or remodel their kitchen. So, thank you.
Ms. Barger.
I have an agenda item request, so I need to get 2 other council members to sign up for this one, perhaps. I have received many letters and emails from residents that are very dissatisfied with our present ordinance regarding oversized vehicles. I'm talking about code enforcement. I understand that the city, the staff is working with a plan for code enforcement, perhaps even change the ordinance. I don't know exactly what the plan is. But I think our residents need to be informed of what our plans are. Code enforcement has become a major issue in this town, not only from the point of view of oversized vehicles, but also on commercial and private properties that are basically very much in a blighted condition. So I would like to request an agenda item where we can get an update on what are our efforts for code enforcement, what are our new proposals, and who is going to be working on it, what kind of committee will be forming. I do know that CDBG funds have been allocated for this effort. I would like to know what kind of allocations are we making and where are they going, and what is the time frame for the accomplishment of that plan.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
We have a second.
I'll also second it.
I had an item I was going to read tonight to announce the progress made to date. It already calls for the plan to be put together and for it to be brought to council piecemeal. This is something that's already going on within the city. We can ask Ms. Barcelona to put it on the list of if that would be on the list of future items. But I don't want a specific date. Let me talk about, make that announcement now, because we each, I think, received a copy of a memorandum. But we started a working group. We held off the code enforcement issue until we had a new city attorney. Last month, we started 2 months ago now, a workshop to consist of the community development, the city attorney, the police, the fire, and the administration to discuss how code enforcement would be done within the city. There have been a couple of meetings also since then. The issue of graffiti abatement has been discussed. The use of a community services officer funded partially by the redevelopment agency is proposed. The regulations that we established in 2007 holding property owners responsible to clean up graffiti have not had to be enforced since the volunteer crew and the enhanced crew for graffiti abatement has been effective. Vehicle parking, the code enforcement team is in the process of preparing a three-pronged approach to submit to council regarding the on-street parking of recreational vehicles, of unattended detached trailers, and this is being developed now to come forward. With the motion, I'm sure that it'll add an emphasis, but it was the next copy of our list of future agenda items would have included this in any event, because this has been ongoing for about 6 months. There are some expenses for parking, changes in parking regulations with signage and some signage needs, and those are discussed in the memo. And I think this went out this afternoon. So I know I'm getting a lot of emails also, people that are complaining about parking, and we have been moving forward with this. But with the motion, do you have any idea when you'd be ready to come to council with some specific? If we're talking about revising ordinances, that there's a process for that, right?
Yes, the process, Mr. Mayor, is going to take at least 2 months before you'll see it on the agenda. Is that correct, City Attorney?
I think that's a good estimate.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to announce that I am very pleased with the initial progress that the staff code enforcement team has made. We've met 3 times and have made some good headway in the approach. And I can say that City Council can anticipate code enforcement, code ordinance revision, and it will strengthen our current code enforcement efforts.
Mr. Lingle?
I don't want to put words in Ms. Martner's mouth, but I believe Ms. Martner is just asking for an update. She's not asking us to come forward with the entire plan. I believe she's just asking for an update. Is that correct, Ms. Martner?
Yes, and also I do want a clear timeline and budget, if you will. Where are the monies going to be spent and how? You know, if we get a memo it doesn't really go to the public. I mean, the city may be doing great things on this, but the public is still to this day doesn't know, and it is perceived as the city not doing anything. So I really do think that updates, presentations are of need, and basically my only recourse is to request to put it on the agenda, and it gets discussed. If I would not have brought it up tonight, nobody would have talked about it. So,
Ma'am, I had it right here.
okay, well, good. I'm glad that, Mayor, you're being proactive on that. Okay, great. I guess I got into it, but I would like an update. I think it could be a presentation, 5 minutes. You tell us who are the committee members, what kind of monies are being spent, what are you tackling, the timeline, when do you expect that the ordinance would be in place for approval to the council. 5 minutes presentation.
Okay, we have a motion for an update to be presented. Mr. Durham?
Just so the citizens of Lompoc know, staff and the Lompoc Police Department have already started doing a lot of code enforcements. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the staff at the PD advised me that last week alone they cited and or tagged at least 60 vehicles. I know that's a small number for the numbers that we have, but that's a huge step in it, ahead. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we do have a city attorney that is willing to work with the city, with the law enforcement and the courts. So there are going to be some great changes here. You're not going to see the Blythe, at Pine and Third and several other places throughout the city. It may take a couple of 3 months, but it's not going to be 2 or 3 years. So we are working on it diligently.
Okay. We have a motion and a request for an update at the next meeting. Would you like to take this and present it as an update of what's going on? And
My understanding is that we have a second and a third, so there is no vote or anything to be done, correct? Am I correct?
It takes a vote of 3, but it takes a second to put it on as a motion only. I don't think a third second constitutes a vote. But we can.
There's a couple of ways that you can handle it. Staff understands that there's a consensus of at least 3 that want to have a status report. So whether you take a formal motion or not, you're going to get a status report.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that's what we put in the handbook, that it would take 3 of us to ask for an agenda. We wouldn't have to go through this long harangue. Did you mean for the next meeting, or?
As it is possible, but not, 3 months from now.
Okay.
Okay. And staff has our consensus. Are there any other comments from council? I have one other one. I did receive a request from the County Superior Court to help publicize that they're looking for grand jurors. The civil grand jury selection process is now underway. People will need to apply by the first week in May. If you want to serve on the grand jury, what they're looking for is people with objectivity, analytical abilities, writing skills, and community interest. They estimate that it would be 20 to 25 hours a week that you would spend going out and looking into local governments. The agenda will be provided. Our former city administrator is winding down his career by spending 20 to 25 hours a week on this year's grand jury, and last time I talked to him, he said he was having a lot of fun being able to go in and look at organizations. So you can either contact the grand jury, you can contact us here at City Hall, and we can tell you how to go on the web and find out. But consider, if you're retired, if you've got the time to spend 20 hours a week or 2-3 days a week, and you want to look into problems in local governments. They will go into any level of government in the county of Santa Barbara, and look at how things are being done and make sure that the laws and the rules are being complied with. So that application is here, and that was the only other comment I had for tonight. Moving on, oral communications. This time, 5 minutes. Encourage the public to comment. Please direct your comments to the council, and you can speak on any item that's either on the agenda or relative to city business. If you do want to comment on an item that's on the agenda, would prefer that you'd wait until that time to hear it, but if for some reason you can't stay till later on, we invite you to make your comments now. State your name.
Thank you and good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is John Polanski. I'm Director of Housing Development at the Housing Authority of the County of Santa Barbara, and also our affiliate nonprofit Surf Development Company. As you may recall, a few months back, when the council considered and approved our request to have a development plan and entitlement to develop 55 affordable rental units immediately adjacent and behind our administrative office at 815 West Ocean. During the process where you eventually approved, we had members of the public and also council members give us verbal direction that you would like to see the 10 units, which are 3 duplexes and 4 single-family homes that need to be moved off the site, that you would like us to try to set up a process where they could be moved by a nonprofit or some other organization that could utilize the homes, as opposed to just simply demolishing them. And we did make a verbal commitment at the Planning Commission when it came up and before the council that we would try to do that. We just finished up through our attorney developing this public notice. This is the verbiage of the public notice. We couldn't think really of a better forum to initiate the public outreach for the first 2 of those 10 units. And these are 2 4-bedroom single-family homes that are on the south side of Apricot. One actually, though, has a Dahlia address. It's 120 North Dahlia. The other one is 810 West Apricot. These are 4-bedroom homes immediately behind our administrative office. And these are the first 2 because the first stage of the development is to reconfigure the parking lot. So these are the 2 that we're actively considering proposals for people at no cost to the Housing Authority and without any representation or warranty to make arrangements, put in a proposal by March 31st, and offer to move them. Preference is being given to nonprofits, particularly those that work with affordable housing. We don't want to exclude anybody, though, because we agree with the council members and with the members of the public that it would be a shame to just demolish if somebody can use these. We will be having an open house for inspection, and it's in the notice. It is on March 17th at 10 a.m., and it would be assembling at the 810 West Apricot property. So anybody who's interested, let me just quickly give you our phone number. I did ask for additional copies to be circulated so that the city at least would be aware, but any particular questions can be directed to our project coordinator, Jason Rojas, at 736-3423, extension 219. And thank you again very much for an excellent suggestion that actually until the public mentioned it and council members signed on, we really hadn't, quite frankly, thought about what we were going to do with these units. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Polanski. There were a number of extra copies of the announcement of this activity. Can we put those on the table in the lobby or something so anybody can pick them up if they want on the way out? Any other public comment?
Evening, Mayor, members of the council. Ralph Harmon. I'm a little concerned with the matter of business that took place earlier here with the discussion outside of the public with the clergy group and the precedents that this is setting. Essentially, you had a public hearing when everybody could speak, and they had their chance to speak just like everybody else. Now, every time you have a public hearing in a group or individual says, hey, I wasn't heard properly, I want to have a private meeting now. Is this what we're going to do? Is this the new policy of the city council? I certainly hope not. I think your city attorney was right that you were close to a slippery slope as far as the Brown Act, and you know, it may fly in the face of the Brown Act. It may be okay, but as far as the intent of the Brown Act, I think you guys are violating it. And I think having meetings with multiple members of the council outside of the public arena is against the Brown Act. And as I heard it, 3 members have already met with these people. And what Mayor Sminsky was indicating, I think you were right on target, that now you're going to have 2 more. The fact that you're not going to talk is inconceivable, at least to the public. I doubt you guys can keep your mouth shut and that long. So I just are very, very concerned with the process that you're taking on this and what it means to future items and any particular group that wants to come in front of you and say, hey, we weren't heard, so we want a private hearing now. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harmon. Anybody else want to speak? Mr. Lynn?
John Lynn, City of Lompoc. I guess my subject is the graffiti bandits, and apparently this weekend they turned into the window bandits because we had one broken in our building, and I was chatting with the glass guy, and he was running all over town diligently replacing broken windows. I believe we're all concerned with blight, and I gave our city administrator some thoughts the other day in writing, and was talking to her about a process that was done by the City of Industry. And I brought it to council many years ago, but maybe now is the moment. You know, the council expressed some frustration a couple meetings ago that we have CDBG funds and RDA funds, and they're all stuck in projects that we can't move forward with. And I also talked to the Workforce Investment Board, and they indicated they would be interested in being involved and that they have funding to supply people who need to learn a trade, and the trade they could learn is painting. I think there are 2 things that could be accomplished. Number 1, we could get much more rapid graffiti abatement. We could use some of those funds to fund a police officer who could go around in the late evening and find the freshest graffiti, and then those folks could be dispatched in the wee hours of the morning to paint it out, because nothing pisses those people off more than having their graffiti painted over before they can show it to their friends. Then we could utilize the CDBG or RDA funds to supply a vehicle and to supply the equipment. What they use in industry is they have some set colors that are in the vehicle on airlesses, and it allows them to go out and paint entire walls and then repaint the wall to match. Because somebody said, well, what's better, the graffiti or the patchwork when it's gone? I believe the patchwork is better. But what they've done down there is the landlords have adopted, primarily for back walls and hidden locations, one of the, I believe they had 4 colors. And so when a repaint is done, it doesn't show up. And what they did is they started on one side of the town and they painted their way to the other and made it all go away and made it all match. And that took, I think it was 11 months because they had a really bad problem. But here we could probably do it in substantially less time. The other thing that they did is they created an enforcement program. And literally, when the graffiti crew goes out there, they take a picture and they type it into a computer. And all that's documented. The other night I was chatting with an officer, and his frustration was that he had tracked down somebody that had perhaps 50 acts of graffiti, but when it went to the DA, all the kid got was a little probation. And so it's not much of a deterrent. I mean, he should have been out there repainting things. And by coordinating our efforts with the district attorney and having an accurate record-keeping system, something could be done. And if you've noticed lately, we have one tagger that's now covered about a third of Lompoc and tagging areas that have never been tagged before, and we have not been able to catch them yet. So I would suggest that to the council and hope you might carry it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Anyone else like to speak at this time? Seeing no one rise, we'll close the oral communication period. And we'll move to the consent calendar. What are the wishes of the council on the consent calendar? There was nothing pulled on this one.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
I second.
We have a motion, second. Those who want, any comments? Let's vote. Motion passes unanimously. Appointments. We have appointments tonight to the Planning Commission. We have the recommendation in front of us. This was the council seat that Ms. Martner claims or owns, and we have Councilmember Martner's nominee and the application before us. I see that the applicant is here. Kate, would you like to say something at this time, or you just want us to move on? And you don't have to speak. No, thank you. Thank you. What are the wishes? I'll let you make the motion.
I'd like to say a few words. I regret that Mr. Hamilton left the Planning Commission. Life changes did not allow him to continue, and he made some choices. He really did enjoy his tenure for 1 year at the Planning Commission, and he says thank you for the staff and thank you for giving this council, having him the opportunity to work with the government. I had to go and look for another potential candidate, and Ms. Griffith came to the forefront. And I have to say, Ms. Griffith, I think, has a lot to offer to the Planning Commission because of her unique background. She has a lot of experience in economic development, and I would like to see the Planning Commission focus on businesses. It is really our primary, most important issue we have in this town. We need to generate revenues, and we need to do everything we can, from changing zones if they need to be done, as we just heard for the Sobani Center. So I would like her to take a very proactive approach and work with the Planning Commission and the staff to really put in a system in place that we can get businesses into town in a very expeditional fashion. So I hope the council concurs with me and nominate Ms. Griffith.
Thank you. Is there a second on the nomination?
I'll second the nomination.
We have a motion and a second. Let's any other comments from council? None. Let's vote. And Ms. Griffiths is appointed. Congratulations. You're appointed to the Planning Commission. We have an appointment to the NCPA Commission. The recommendation there is that we add our utility manager to the list of persons that can represent the city of Lompoc on the Northern California Power Agency. What are the wishes of the council on that nomination?
Well, you're talking about Mr. Stassi, right?
No, Marty.
Oh. I'm confused then, obviously.
Holster?
Oh, okay.
Is the new, he replaced Rodney Ray as the manager of the electric utility, reporting to the utility director.
Okay.
And he would be an alternate also, along with Mr. Stassi. Isn't that the way I understood the appointment?
So, Mr. Mayor, so I understand, you are the appointee from the City Council. I'm your alternate. So Mr. Stasi would be representing the actual utility, and Marty would be his alternate. Is that the way we're looking at this?
No, there have been times when we could not send either the commissioner or the alternate. Mr. Stasi is an alternate commissioner.
Okay.
Okay, and I thought he was an alternate commissioner already, and I thought this was to appoint. Maybe I'm wrong. Is Ron? What are we doing? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Whose is he?
That's the first time it was approved, I was left off, but I was a alternate before that.
Putting you back on.
And this is to put me back on, but Don informs me this is to add Marty, but if you look at the table, it has our three names and no mention of Marty.
No mention of Marty.
Didn't know if this was being done at this time or if this is just to confirm the earlier appointments when the chart did not reflect our earlier information that we had provided to NCPA.
But our electric utility manager has always been an alternate in addition to the utility director. Is that correct?
Yes. Historically, Rodney Ray has been an alternate.
Yes. I don't know if the agenda is not clear whether we can do this tonight. Then let's bring it back, or let's vote to approve this one, which puts you on, and some of the documentation left your name off.
That's true. The past documentation.
And we'll do that, but then we'll come back with one to put Marty on also. Okay.
So what we're voting on tonight is to confirm Ron Stasi.
Some of the documentation lists him as an alternate, some of it doesn't. So this is to confirm Ron then, and we'll come back because we have hired an electric utility director, but we'll come back and put him on as an alternate also.
So I move to appoint Ron Stasi as an alternate to NCPA.
I second that.
Are there any comments from the public on this one? Now that we figured out what it is we're doing, okay. None rise. We'll vote on this measure. And that passes unanimously.
For a certificate of convenience and necessity and a taxi cab owner's permit was submitted by Mr. Armin Tassanyan in November of 2009. His intent is to open a second taxi cab company in Lompoc. Mr. Tassanyan is the owner of Promenade Cab Company. The Promenade Cab Company is based out of Santa Barbara. However, Mr. Tassanyan has indicated that Mr. Robert Perry is the company area coordinator, and Mr. Perry will be the local contact person. The permit process is before council for approval because there is one other taxi cab service already conducting taxi services in Lompoc, and that is Lompoc Taxi. And council must now determine whether there is a public convenience and a necessity for the second taxi service. Mr. Tassanyan states in his application the current level of taxi service to the city of Lompoc is non-existent after 2 a.m. And Mr. Tassanyan submitted his application to provide services in Lompoc 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The Lompoc Municipal Code 5.36 regulates the operation of taxi cabs in the public streets of Lompoc, and prior to operating any taxi cab, the business owner must apply for a taxi cab owner's permit, which is issued only after completion of a background investigation by the Lompoc Police Chief, council approval of a certificate of convenience and necessity, and verification of a required insurance certificate. The insurance certificate filed by Mr. Tasanian has been reviewed and approved by the city attorney. The police report indicates Mr. Tasanian has no criminal history and no convictions of accidents per the California Department of Motor Vehicles. The police department has conducted a background check, and the police report is attached to staff's report, which supports the need for a second taxi service. The police report recommends approval of the permit, and staff recommends that council conduct a public hearing and receive oral testimony, determine if the public convenience and necessity requires an operation of passenger transportation by Promenade Cab Company, and if the applicant is fit, willing, and able to provide taxi services, and if so, then direct the city clerk to include those findings in the official minutes of the city council and direct staff to issue a taxi cab owner permit to Mr. Tasanian. And this concludes staff's report.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council of Ms. Barcelona based on the presentations so far?
Yes, I have a question. In the staff report, Ms. Barcelona, on the second page, the third paragraph down, that there's been no permit to operate has been filed yet.
That's correct.
That's correct. And I also noted, I saw a Promenade Cab Company van in town today driving around, so I don't know what they were doing up here now. Maybe
that's uncertain.
Someone can explain that to me. But anyway, thank you.
Mr. Lingle, did you have your light on?
Yeah, I'm not sure is the applicant going to be speaking tonight? Okay, so maybe the question will be directed towards the applicant then. Thank you.
Okay. Before we open to comments to the public, I'll ask the applicant to come forward if there aren't, to comment on the application. We can meet him. If you come up.
Mayor Sminsky, council members, my name is Robert Perry. I'm a 27-year resident of Buellton, and I am been asked by Mr. Tasanian to act as an independent representative for his company as an area representative in the San Ynez Valley and North County. For the past, I'll start off with a little history of Promenade Cab. About 4 years ago, Mr. Tasanian started Promenade Cab in Santa Barbara, and today he is the largest unified operator of taxi cabs in that area and in the San Ynez Valley. We have more cabs under the label Promenade Cab, all identical in this area than any other single company. We have prided ourselves in the last year and a half of bringing a high level of quality taxi service to San Ynez Valley. We provide 24-hour-a-day, 7-day service with about 12 to 15-minute service times, 24 hours a day in the San Ynez Valley area. And we find this is extremely valuable, especially on Friday and Saturday nights. We find that it is extremely valuable for the community in servicing people that need to get around late at night, early in the morning, people that have broken down cars, people that need other levels of transportation than public transportation is able to provide. One of the things that I did when looking through the data on how to justify a taxi operation is I looked at what other metropolitan areas of similar size do. And there is a Schaller group out of New York that did a substantial amount of research on taxi services for large metropolitan areas, small metropolitan areas, and other areas. And what I found from the data that we have, or I have learned from, is that in a place like Los Angeles, which is substantially underrepresented in taxis, there's about 0.9 taxis for every 1,000 people. What that would mean for a city of Lompoc is somewhere around 38 or 39 taxis. There's about 40,000 people. We felt that that was excessive for this area. There's no way that a city like Lompoc with no airport that is on a regular schedule, or train stations, or large numbers of people would support that. So we did more than cut that in half, and we believe that the city of Lompoc will support about 10 taxis. Right now, our understanding is the city is served by 2, and that taxi service ends at 2 o'clock and begins again at 6 a.m. We find that between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., we have a substantial number of rides. And as I tell my drivers, and it's a different world being a taxi driver, but I tell each of my drivers this: think about whose life you may have saved tonight. You have to think about it that way. Because when you go out and drive and you're taking people for rides that need to be taken in a ride and not allowed to drive, then you may have saved someone else's life, their life, police officer's life. You don't know. It's just another fantasy that I try to explain, that it's a way that you not only can justify your job, but feel good about what you're doing and adding to the community. We do that every day of the week, and we want to be able to provide this service for Lompoc. We have found that we are able to provide it in the city of Santa Maria, or Santa Barbara, in the city of Goleta. We provide wine tours. We keep people off the roads in the backcountry when they're going to all the wineries that are now prolific in the area. And we provide large capacity vans also for large groups. Now, you may well have seen a promenade cab in town. I came to town today to drop off some paperwork, and I drive a promenade cab all the time. There's also 2 young men that live in Mission Hills and Vandenberg Village who just recently started driving for us, and I've told them that they are more than welcome to use those vehicles on personal errands and if they need to go somewhere. Over the past several months, I do the dispatching for the company, and we do it remotely using the newest technology droid that I have to carry and now I'm mated to, that can tell me any address anywhere and directions to go anywhere. That I understand that the city is underrepresented in taxis, because when I get calls at 10 o'clock at night and 1 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the morning from the city of Lompoc asking me to come to Jasper's or come to some other place in Lompoc, I have to politely refuse the ride at that time in the morning because I cannot legally serve the city of Lompoc. And this has been happening more and more. And the response I always give is I politely refuse to be able to take the ride because we don't have a permit to operate in the city. We are able to operate in all unincorporated areas of the county, which we do right now. The city of Solvang, the city of Buellton, all of San Ynez Valley, the Los Alamos Valley. We are able to currently provide 12 to 15-minute service to all areas except perhaps Tepiscay. But we have application now before you, also the city of Santa Maria. And it is our goal to be able to serve all of North Santa Barbara County with 12 to 15-minute taxi service 24 hours a day. So if there's any questions that I can answer, I don't want to bombard you with lots of statistics and all the reports that I have on disk right here that I discussed with the city clerk that you can have if you wish. It's fairly boring, but I can tell you about taxi service, how it applies in North County, and what we intend to do.
Thank you. Mr. Durham, you have a question?
I just have a couple of questions. How many vehicles do you plan on serving Lompoc area?
We plan to serve Lompoc with 4 to 6 vehicles, depending on the level of calls that we get. Once we establish our marketing plan, we talk to the folks at Vandenberg, we advertise. We find that when we do put our cards out there and we have our information in the local hotels and restaurants and watering holes and places that everywhere to car dealerships, when someone has to drop off their car, they need right-of-way transportation. We will know by the number of calls that we get what level of taxi service or volume that we have to provide. If I have people that have to wait for rides, I need to add a cab. If I have to have someone that I can't get a ride to at 3 a.m., I need to hire a taxi driver that is going to cover those hours. And generally with 5 or 6 drivers, you have personalities that are such that you can service all the hours of the day, 7 days a week, 24 hours, without having to wake someone up in the middle of the night. You're going to have a driver that does stay up in the middle of the night and wants the service.
Now, for these vehicles that are servicing Lompoc, are you going to have a home base here in Lompoc?
No. Each driver keeps the vehicle at his home. It's available to him 24 hours a day, so if he is on so to speak, in the middle of the night, and he does get a call, he gets in his car and heads out, and that would be a driver from Mission Hills, or right here in town, which another driver lives here in town, or another one in Vandenberg Village, that we would have someone just a few minutes away all the time.
Thank you.
Mr. Boucher.
Yeah, in one of the, part of the staff report, the Lompoc Police Department memorandum, it says you're planning on 3 vehicles in Lompoc.
We listed 3 vehicles initially to, that we have a large fleet. We have probably 30 vehicles we can choose from. And I wanted to list the 3 vehicles that we have operating close to here right now. The Lincoln specifically is driven by someone that lives on J Street, and the large van, the maxi van that I called it, I keep in Buellton, so it's only about 15 minutes away. So we will more than likely add vehicles and at times even change vehicles, because as a vehicle goes out for service, and Mr. Tassanian keeps a maintenance yard in Goleta, which we do all our maintenance and try to keep that in-house and keep the vehicles safe and well-maintained. Very important. One of the things that, and I'm going to talk about maintenance for just a moment, one of the things that I noticed in reading the analysis of why people either like or dislike taxi service is the cleanliness and efficiency of the vehicle. People do not like getting into a dirty vehicle, and that's one of the things I've explained to my drivers is that before you start every day, and if you're ever in the military, you know you do this with a vehicle every time you start it, or an airplane every time you go for a flight, is you get it ready to go. You check your oil, check your tires, make sure it's clean. And that way, when your fares hop in your car, they get a clean vehicle, a reliable vehicle, one that's presentable and they can feel good driving in.
Okay, so you're going to have to change all this paperwork then if you're planning on more than 3 vehicles.
We will. Those 3 vehicles will be our initial 3 vehicles, and then we will certainly add vehicles, and we can, of course.
But then don't you have to change all your paperwork with the police department and everything?
We would. The way I understand it is we would add the vehicles and simply add them, and there's a fee for each vehicle, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
Is that how it works? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Mr. Tassanian, we've done a background check on you. You have no criminal record. You've got a good driving record. But tell me about your drivers. That's what I'm concerned about. What screening and background checks do we do on the drivers?
Every driver that operates a taxi cab in Santa Barbara must go through a live scan process with the Sheriff's Department or the law enforcement agency that's controlling. In this case, it's the Lompoc Police Department. The way I understand a live scan process is that each agency that requests a live scan will be informed if a driver or an individual is involved in a DUI or a criminal act in another jurisdiction or even in Nevada or another state. Every law enforcement agency that does the live scan, in other words, if it was just Lompoc PD, they would be informed if a driver was involved in an automobile accident in another jurisdiction. Our drivers are they have live scans by the Sheriff's Department. They're licensed in the county areas, and also they will do a live scan for the city of Santa Barbara or city of Lompoc. That allows them to operate in the unincorporated and the incorporated parts of Lompoc. Number 2, each and every driver goes through a periodic drug screening test. We have a very strict drug and alcohol abuse program as part of our paperwork and our operations manual. One of the things, I've been an aviator for 30 years, and I'm critically aware of the effects of alcohol or lack of oxygen in the human body. And one of the things I wrote into our alcohol and drug abuse policy is that a driver will not operate a promenade cab vehicle for the 8 hours previous to his imbibing alcohol. What this means, and this is the same thing as they require of FAA pilots, Federal Aviation Administration requires of pilots, that for an 8-hour previous, that driver has not had a drink. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, if the driver decides that he's going to go out with his friends and have a beer at their house, he cannot take a drive to LAX at 7 o'clock the next morning. That's a violation of our rules. We want to guarantee the people that sit in the vehicle that they have a safe driver. Each driver is also fingerprinted by law enforcement agencies. They have a clean driving record, or at least a driving record that does not prevent them or keep them from getting a standard license. And it only requires a standard license. This is not a chauffeur or commercial license that they are required to have. But I do a traffic abstract, and I do the same questionnaire that the city of Lompoc provides for drivers, and I ask the same questions in my screening process. So after I screen, I know that they will pass the screening processes that Lompoc PD provides.
Thank you. Chief Dabney, I believe everything you're saying. I just was wondering if Chief Dabney could come up and add to this at all. And you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingle, rest of council, Mayor Szymanski. My name is Chief Dabney with the Lompoc Police Department. We require, what you have before you this evening is a request for a finding of public convenience and necessity for the company itself. Every driver that drives for this company that operates within the city limits of Lompoc will have to receive an individual background check to be permitted as a taxi cab driver. So if they add another driver to the staff here in Lompoc, that person will be going through a background check and be permitted as a cab driver for the city of Lompoc. And he is correct, Mr. Perry is correct on the adding of vehicles. Anytime they add vehicles or delete vehicles from their fleet, they notify us as well. So this is for the action tonight is for the company itself, not the individual drivers, and that's a separate.
Motion is approved. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been going for 2 hours. I'm going to take a short break. Pardon?
Yeah.
9 is the. Okay, we'll take that one and we'll continue item 9 to.
Just for the record, we're going to open the public hearing, see if there's anyone here who wants to speak. If not, we'll continue it till April 6th.
Are we sure we're going to be on that night? We could just defer and not take any action tonight and open it then, couldn't we?
Not really.
Oh, okay. Pardon? I think that they're waiting for another item, but we will deal with item 9. We'll open the public hearing at this time before we take our break. We'll ask if there's anyone want to speak now. If not, we'll continue the public hearing at the request of the applicant to be heard at our next at our April 6th meeting, which is 30 days from now, almost. See, when no one wants to speak now, we'll close that item and continue it.
Make a motion to continue it.
We have a motion to continue.
I move we continue the item number 9 till April 6th meeting.
Do we have a second for that motion?
I second.
Those in favor, that item's continued. Do you know where Laurel is? Turn your mic on if you want to speak, please. What? No, we can start. Item 10, loan extension request from LHCDC. We've had a written request that this item be deferred, extended, dropped from the agenda tonight. I would ask Ms. Ehrlich to come forward and restate her request and explain to us why and what we should do about some of the problems this creates.
Okay, I am sorry. Sue Ehrlich, Executive Director, Lompoc Housing and Community Development Corporation. We have, in our original request for an extension, after we began to pursue what was put into that request, a lot of the experts in the field were saying, you know, in the time period of the extension, this is you need more options. Then this is a very narrow. You've really boxed into this one particular project that probably isn't financially feasible anymore because of what's happened to affordable housing funding. And so really all we were looking for is to have time to broaden the possibilities of the type of project that we could bring forward on this property so that everything is successful in terms of asking for an extension and then being able to successfully take out the Cal HFA financing. So that's really all it is. We would be happy with a continuance, an extension, whatever works for council. We just need to have more time to investigate all of the possibilities that can be possible projects that can be successfully brought forward on this property. So that's really what it's about, is that...
Until when? Indefinite?
June 1st. If staff is comfortable with June 1st, we feel that we can bring back several options by June 1st that are feasible, as opposed to a special needs project right now has a very, very low chance of attracting financing.
But the request before us tonight is to give you an extension to June 1st.
Right, but the extension, this could just be, the extension was very specific to the Casa del Desarrollo project. We may not be able to successfully do the Casa del Desarrollo project anytime in the next couple of years because of the nature of the project. It's very hard to get funding for that. So all we wanted to do was we didn't know if that was boxing us into that one particular project or if we needed to have a different request for extension that dealt with other possible projects. Does that make sense?
No.
I'm sorry.
No, I don't. I didn't. I think we have.
Make any sense.
I think we have the authority to grant that extension with what's before us tonight without tying it to a specific project.
That's all that we're looking for. We just do not want to be tied to a specific project.
I'm going to turn to council. It's up to us, I think, to determine whether we want to grant the extension or whether we want to deal with the issue before us tonight, which would allow us to grant the extension to the same time period and in a way that it's not tied to any specific proposal. If before I let Ms. Wortman go on, if we do want to honor the request and not hear it tonight, it's no use having her go on with her staff report. So would you?
Chair Sminsky, the request before you is a loan extension, which is not so much for the project as it's a request to extend the loan that was strictly for the acquisition of the property. So the project versus the acquisition loan are kind of two separate items. Extending the loan as and the taking the action that's recommended does not box them into going forward with the project. It's just extending the repayment terms of the loan.
Ms. Martin.
I think Ms. Wordman is exactly correct. As I understand this agenda item, the discussion here tonight is to see whether we will grant an extension of this loan, whether that project will occur with some other group, as it was mentioned in the report. We can leave that aside, but I really would like to encourage this council that we discuss this tonight. This loan is already defaulted. Am I correct? I have some questions, and I don't know if this is the time to make these questions, but
it has matured.
Okay, the loan has been mature. Is a loan for $375,000 that has been spent on exactly what?
It was a loan to LHCDC for the acquisition of the property in which we are in first position.
Okay, so the monies were spent to acquire this property?
Correct.
And at this point in time, LHCDC does not have monies to pay back this loan?
In affordable housing, the standard process, and this has occurred with just about all of our projects and all the projects that you could look at in the county, that the process is that usually a temporary source of public funds is brought in, or a permanent source of public funds, depending, is brought in to acquire the property, and if it's a temporary source, it's taken out by the permanent financing. So it is never the nonprofit that actually repays the loan. It's the subsidy that comes in from, be it the home funds through HUD, or the state used to have a multifamily housing program. Unfortunately, that's gone now. So that's the standard process.
So you have not been able to secure private fundings to develop this project, am I correct?
Public funds, no.
Public funds or private funds?
Really, for affordable housing, you work with certain programs.
Funds. You have not been able to secure public funds to develop this project?
Not at this point. The affordable housing industry has been in disarray for several years, and there are no public funds for which we have been able to apply for this project yet.
So what would this extension do?
That's exactly what, that's the concern I have too, is that there are other projects that can meet, be it a Habitat for Humanities project, perhaps John Polanski's gone, but perhaps we move some homes from the Housing Authority over there. But looking at alternatives that do not involve necessarily going after low-income housing tax credits, which is really the only game that's left. And by the way, I should back up. We did actually secure a reservation of county home funds as well as city home funds for this project. Its next step was to go for the low-income housing tax credits. Unfortunately, it's a special needs project, and the industry changed, and the tax credit investors do not want to work on a special needs or invest in a special needs project. The other issue that has happened with special needs projects, in this case, Casa del Desarrollo, would need supportive services to be provided by the county Alcohol, Drug, and Mental Health Department, as well as the Department of Social Services. Their funds are being cut, so we would not even be able to rely on the services that were originally planned for this project. So we have to look at a different type of project. As I said, a habitat project doesn't use tax credits. That's a whole different animal. So we just need the time to see, maybe there's an economic development project that goes well there. There's funding out there for that. So we just have to find the right fit with the types of funding that are available. And so that's what we're looking to have some time to do.
One more question. I'd just like to make it clear for the record that I did make a request about a year ago to get an update on the Casa del Desarrollo project, and I never did. It was put on the agenda. It is, as you can see it in your orange unfinished items. I am sure the staff did communicate that to LHCDC. We never got an update. It's been over a year. It took for this loan to mature for LHCDC to come up and say, please give us another extension. And I just have to say that it's really hard to build any sense that your agency will be able to secure any funds so that loan can be repaid. And between now, well, you shrug your shoulders and you raise your eyebrows. I am sorry, this is tax monies. This is taxpayers' monies, and I think it needs a fair amount of respect. And by just seeing your demeanor basically says that you're not concerned.
No, it doesn't say that. It says I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you.
So can you give us any assurance that you will be successful between now and June 1st to secure funds? And if you're not, what is Plan B?
In this environment, no one can be sure of success in securing funds. All we can do is try, and that's what we would do. and that's what we're proposing to do. In terms of Plan B, we would have to talk to staff and see what the options are.
And
That's
you
all we
plan
can
to do that after June 1st?
Pardon?
You plan to
No,
start
actually,
working on
we-
Plan
we-
B after June 1st?
No, we've actually already set up a meeting with staff for March 16th to explore all possible options.
But let's,
Okay.
let's go on. Councilwoman Rouget.
Well, I have similar concerns as Councilmember Martner. You know, so we extend it to June 1st, and then you're going to be back with a plan? Is that what's going on, Ms. Wertman?
Yes, at this point, we're requesting an extension to give them time to develop a repayment plan of the loan.
And what's the guarantee that that would start, the repayment would start to happen?
I mean, there's no guarantee. What they're going to do is try to develop a project that would enable them to repay the agency loan. The agency has a deed of trust on the property, but the agency obviously would like to have the money repaid, so it's available to repay our CHAFA money in about 24 months.
So we are obligated to repay that CHAFA money, right? In, what'd you say, 2 years? Or
Correct.
2 years from now?
A little over 2 years.
From now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to, Tony?
Please. If I understand this right, the loan was executed on January 30th of 06?
Sure. Yes, it was, yeah.
Okay.
I looked at that today.
Okay, and it had a term of 48 months with a maturity of February 1st of 2010. I'm sorry, I had the same concerns. What's happened over the last 4 years?
I think some of the council members who have been on council for a while are more familiar with this. In affordable housing in Santa Barbara County, there are insufficient federal funds, which are your building block for leveraging your tax credits, or when the state had a program. You start locally and you gather your locally controlled funds and build up to a point where you can leverage the state or tax credit funds. That usually takes several years because there are very few dollars in this county. There is not enough. In the funds that are controlled by Santa Barbara County, they break them up across many projects. So you have to go back multiple years. So we spent 3 years gathering commitments of funds from the county and the city to be sufficient to leverage the tax credit program in particular, or the state at the time had a set aside for at-risk youth. So by the time we gathered those funds, it was 2008. The state's program was falling apart. The tax credit market fell apart. So we've been waiting. There were no, not no tax credits, but the tax credit program was very, very difficult last year. And it was recommended by our consultant that we stood no chance of finding an investor for the project. The tax credits have to be sold to an investor. So it's been in affordable housing, it's been watch and wait to see how the programs are going to rebuild themselves. And unfortunately, as I said, by 2008, when we were ready to go to the next level, there was no next level.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Leo.
Ms. Wordman, walk me through this. We loaned $375,000.
Correct.
The money has been spent to purchase property.
Correct.
Okay. We have the first on this property.
Correct.
If we choose not to extend the loan period, the loan goes into default.
Then we will probably issue a notice of default and go through that procedure.
Okay. If we go through that procedure, and maybe the attorney needs to get involved in this, does the property then become the ownership of the city?
The redevelopment agency.
The redevelopment agency. Okay, so my question is, Ms. Martiner made a good point. This is taxpayer dollars, but the money has been spent already. It's not going to go back to the taxpayer right now. The city's going to be left with a piece of property that is probably worth half that amount right now. So if we were to try to sell the property, we'd be lucky to get $200,000 for it. We're going to be sitting with a piece of property that we really don't want, that we, the city, don't want, probably no market for it. The taxpayer dollars have already been spent. At least we have, and Ms. Ehrlich, I don't think even you would say that we're happy with the progress that's happened. But we on this council should realize that we have a community center that is 5 years down in preparing that we still have not built. It's tough times right now. I'm not happy with the progress of LHCDC, but I'm not willing, or I don't want to take back a piece of property that is worth half what we paid for right now, and we have no plans for doing anything. It's going to be a vacant lot that we own, and who knows what's going to happen to it. So I would be in favor of granting the extension just because I don't know what I want to do with this property.
Yeah. Let me make.
I know we have to decide we're going to go on or not.
Let me make a suggestion here. We have before us a request tonight. It was agendized to extend the loan to the 1st of June. That's less than 90 days. I think we ought to do it. I don't think we're prepared to make a decision tonight. I think that taking actions in the default of the loan are things that we should discuss in closed session. It's legal action, and I think staff ought to talk to us sometime between the 1st of June, now and the 1st of June, about what our options, what it means if we take title, if we foreclose on the loan, what it means to us, what we could do with the property, and another reason I think that we should do that is we've got another item on the agenda tonight, and that is our report on our implementation of the general plan. And as we read that, it lists some of the properties that were improved by LHCDC, that they did a good job for the community. They provided, took properties that were in sorry shape and rehabbed them and made available to low-income people in the community. And we all know the times we're in right now. So but I do think that some of the discussion of what our options are gets into legal issues that we ought to be discussing in closed session. I think we can do that with the extension that's before us tonight. And if they do have to come back at that time and indicate that they've made no progress whatsoever, we'll be better prepared to make a decision. If they come back and tell us that they have made some progress, that the market's improving or whatever, we can assess that. It would be my proposal that we honor the request before us for the short period of time, that we don't defer this or continue it or whatever, and that we and that
I'd like to second that.
We get the rest of the.
I'd like to make a motion.
I'd like to hear from the public, and I'd like to
Excuse
hear
me.
from the staff. This is my first reaction to this
Mr.
now,
Mayor,
but-
why was this on the agenda item if one of the options was to recall the loan? Why wasn't this discussed already in a closed session? You know, the only thing that this agenda item says approve. Well, one of the options should be recall the loan, and if it is a legal matter, this agenda item should have gone to a closed session. And I call on the staff, now that the mayor is saying that it needs to go into a closed session, why wasn't that done before it came here? I just, you know, right now, all of a sudden, you're just making an argument to postpone this, but it's really a political argument. It is not an argument that it can be substantiated. I mean, right?
I throw that as a.
Why did this agenda item come here tonight if it may require legal action?
Okay, then that's where why we should continue this discussion and not vote on the loan extension.
I don't want to leave the loan in default either.
Yes,
and I think in
I know,
90 days
but I am suggesting we continue this,
okay.
this item as requested by LHCDC. I don't want to do it, but I think there are several questions flying around, and I think the wisest thing would be for us to continue this item. I don't know if till the next meeting or.
Well, at this point, the reason why staff brought this forward was we were responding to a request from
Correct.
LHCDC to extend the loan. I'm ready to make I'm making a recommendation that we approve it for many of the reasons that Chair Lingle stated. It's up to the council what they would like to do at this point. The request that was processed was just based on the idea to give LHCDC a little bit more time before they hit that notice of default action to put together a plan that could possibly repay this loan, and the city could step out of the project. So I can make the recommendation for the extension to June 1st, and or
I still think we should continue this whole discussion until we have more information.
I think it has to, because really the sequence of events here are that this was brought to an agenda item because there was a request by LHCDC. If I hear correctly, LHCDC is withdrawing that request with this letter, with this joint group that they were going to develop this. So they're asking for more time to come up with a new idea. So really, if they're withdrawing the request, then the city has to make a determination what will they do with the loan. And if the city needs to make a determination of what they will do with the loan and what the options are, and if those require legal advice, it should be conducted in a closed session. Mm-hmm. And perhaps that's what needs to happen here.
Well, I'm going to ask Mr. Perdoni, if we're aware of a default, we take no action. Isn't there some point in time where we've kind of, our opportunity to take the action is lost? No. By extending it, aren't we drawing a line then that we can get educated and then be prepared at that time to take action?
If you take no action tonight, the delay in ending up deciding if you wanted to process the default wouldn't be negatively affected. Okay. In addition, if you take the action tonight, you still have all the time between now and June to have whatever closed session you want, to have discussions about what may happen if the loan isn't paid by June 1st, and lay out options that you have, and you can decide what you want to do as of June 1st. The reason that this was brought to you this way is because staff felt that it was a reasonable thing for this applicant to ask for because of all the facts that you heard tonight.
Okay. Do you have any objection to my opening it up to see if there's any comments from the public at this time? Then we'll bring it back here for discussion. Seeing no objection on the council level, we'll open it for public comment. Are there any from the public that would like to comment on the issue before us? You all stayed for this item, and now you're all just, okay. No comments, we'll bring it back to council. I'm sorry, you had your light on.
I would like to make a motion in which, what is the word, excuse me, convenience? We like to continue.
Continue this action itself?
No. Okay, so if I can explain it, I guess, in an easier way. I would like to do not make a decision tonight regarding whether the loan is being extended or not, because that decision needs to be made at closed doors. And I would like the basically the staff to, or LHCDC's request of withdraw this agenda item because they are not ready. As I understand, they are not ready with any options on the development of Casa del Desarrollo.
No, what we are saying is that after submitting the request for extension, it became very clear that the potential, because we only talked about Casa del Desarrollo, that the potential to only complete that project was not good. And so we are asking for more time to explore other options of other types of projects that can be completed and can successfully repay the city's loan. And that's what we were looking at. That was the change that we were making. Because there are types of projects that can still move forward.
Well, not with the financial state that you just spoke so much about. There are no public monies for low-income housing. The property is worth less than $200,000. Who would want to do anything with that property? And we go on, and it just appears to me that it's very unlikely that you will come up with an option, and I'd like to encourage the council to start looking at what are the potential solutions for this problem. And let me tell you, it is not only this project. As you know, LHCDC has defaulted on another loan, and we did a bailout, and there is the Marks house that is going to mature very soon. So there is a bigger problem here, and yes, maybe it cannot be discussed in this agenda item, but what needs to be discussed, what does the city do with loans that default, and establish a policy, regardless whether it's for the Casa del Desarrollo or for some other project. The council needs to establish a policy and direct the staff in how to deal with loans that are defaulting. And that needs to be done in a closed session.
Mr. Lingle.
Ms. Martiner, if I'm understanding you're right. I believe you're accepting staff's recommendation to continue this, to further get more information, bring it to closed session if necessary.
Yes, I think we need to continue this because we do not have the information tonight to make a decision. But furthermore, I'd like to put in that motion that the continuance of this agenda, particularly this loan that is already defaulted, that discussion has to be done in closed session. This particular loan default, which is what this agenda item is about. Okay.
Okay. Mr. Lingle.
Well, I'd like to second this. I don't know if I want to put all these conditions on it, though, so... Mr. Legal Advisor, tell me. Okay, I can't second it under those conditions. I would like to see it continued, but I think we're putting too many conditions on the staff at this point, so I'm not going to second at this point.
Okay, seeing no second. What?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make another recommendation. I'd like to move that we accept staff recommendations for continuance of this item.
I second that.
Okay, can I have clarification? You just mean continuance, not the loan extension? Okay, so we...
Just continuance.
Continuance, okay.
Indefinitely.
No, not indefinitely.
June 1st.
Continuance till June 1st.
That's what the staff recommended.
Yes. No. It's an extension. The staff is extension of the loan is what the staff is recommending. And what the continuance is, we stop right now.
We don't do anything.
We don't do anything.
Until June 1st.
No, you don't have to put a date on it. But I'm concerned, in the meantime, this thing has defaulted, and, the attorney said there's no ramifications to that, so, but I hate to leave it hanging out there. I think we should have a deadline on when we can continue it to.
Ms. Wordman, would you clarify your recommendation?
I don't want to extend the loan.
Staff recommends approval of the extension request from the Lompoc Housing Community Development Corporation for the $375,000 CHAPA help loan, including milestones, to provide the agency assurance substantial progress is being made during the extension period. If approved, then authorize the executive director or her designee to execute a First Amendment to the promissory note to extend the maturity of the loan from February 1st, 2010 to June 1st, 2010.
I move that we accept staff recommendations.
I second it, and the reason why is because no matter how we look at it, we're still going to be coming back, whether we go on Councilmember Martner's proposal or motion or Councilman Lingle. Either way, we're going to be coming back to this position, and we're putting at least a deadline on it of June 1st.
Mr. Pannoni, your light was on. Is there something you want to?
Sorry, we must be doing okay. It keeps turning it off.
Oh, okay. Mr.
No,
Jay,
I've lost it.
we have a motion and a second.
I do think in the interim that we should have a discussion about loans in default and set policies and so on. And I'm assuming that has to be done in closed session. I don't know when that's supposed to be done. But I do think in between, before June 1st, we should talk about what to do with defaulted loans.
Okay. It's not a, we have a motion on the floor. Let's vote on that one. I think we all agree that we've got to. Okay.
I will not support the motion unless we do have a meeting, whether it's closed session or an agenda item, where the discussion comes about of what do we do with loans that are defaulting, whether it's Casa de Desarrollo, whether it's something else. That needs to happen, because in June 1st, we're going to be right up here not knowing what to do next. And guess what? It's very embarrassing to not know what to do. Okay, I think we don't do any service to this community by sitting here not knowing what needs to be done.
That is an amendment to the motion, then, that the motion be amended to instruct that we
Yes.
discuss our options on the loan and our options on, okay, and our options on the loan and the loan default in closed session. You accept that?
I will accept that. I believe, Ms. Martner, that we could have done that with a council request that it goes there. That's what my hope was going to be, that we just accept staff recommendations, and then if you would have made a council request to proceed with discussions in closed sessions to discuss what happens with default loans, that's what I would have preferred. But if that's your second, I will accept that second, and we can vote on it this way.
Okay, we'll vote on the amendment first. You've made the you've amended the basic motion, and that is to require a closed session. Those in favor? That passes unanimously. Then let's vote on the main motion as amended. And that is to approve staff recommendation, extend the loan, and also have the closed session before the loan matures again. Let's vote. Okay. Well, it might be. The next item is item 11, the City of Lompoc General Plan Annual Report Progress.
Good evening,
Lucille.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is our annual report on the status of the existing general plan. Our recommendation is that the City Council accept the 2009 General Plan Annual Report and direct the Community Development Department to file the report with the Office of Planning and Research and the Department of Housing and Community Development as is required by state law. On February the 10th of 2010, the Planning Commission reviewed this report and recommended that the Council accept the report and direct the Community Development Department to file the report as required. The annual report informs the Council and the Planning Commission on the status and progress of implementing the general plan, the existing city general plan. There's a correction to page 13 of the report, and that was distributed to Council yesterday, I believe. There was a typo in the paragraph describing Table 4, which is units completed in 2009 by income level. The information in the table was that 85 additional units were added to the inventory, and that was correct. The typo was in the written language where the number was 46. So 85 is actually the correct number, which was a 16% increase for us in the year 2009. Additionally, a question was directed to staff today regarding the information on page 16 of the report. That addresses proposed annexations that the city is currently considering. The annexation request for the 10-acre parcel at the Y was received in late 2007, and the request by the applicant at that time was that it be considered for commercial development. Council reviewed this at a meeting in May of 2008 and directed staff that the annexation could be considered as part of the general plan update for our new update. However, the preference of Council at that time was the project be considered as low-density residential. And in our general plan environmental impact report, the project description is for low-density residential. However, Council did say, since the applicant had requested that it be a commercial project, as one of the alternatives, it was studied as a commercial development. So when we come back to Council to look at the land use project and see what the element is, the Council will have the option to make a choice at that time, because both designations, low density and commercial, have been studied and covered by the environmental impact report. So that's where we are with that particular parcel. It's still open for Council determination. Generally, I know that there was concern that we have listed some of the projects, the implementation measures, as on hold where the zoning ordinance updates are considered. And just a note that where there are standards that have been adopted as policy in the general plan, we are implementing those through our development review process. When a project comes to the Planning Division and we put conditions of approval suggestions to the Planning Commission, any language that the Council has adopted is used in our standard conditions of approval, even though the zoning ordinance may not have physically been adopted to take that standard into consideration. One issue is inclusionary housing. We've not adopted the zoning ordinance or an ordinance to specifically identify a number. However, it's been a policy that's been adopted by the Council in our general plan, and we are always working with developers to make sure that we're consistent, because one of the findings that has to be made is that we are consistent with the general plan. So that completes my staff report, and I am available for any questions.
Any questions? Mr.
Mr. Durham, we'll start with
Well,
you.
to begin with, I'd like to say thank you for clarifying the commercial aspect of it, because I'm sure all the council members got an email that was very unpleasant because it was indicated as a commercial possible commercial piece of property as well. So if council requested that in the past, then thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bardner.
I have a question on page 13. There is table 5 that lists, I guess, the allocation. What I understand it to be is the housing needs. And it basically says that 43% of these housing needs have been met on the bottom of page 13.
The current regional housing need requirement for the city is 516 units. And of that, we have achieved the 139.
Is that 43%? I don't know what this 43% means. I think basically says that 43% of our allocation, our needs, housing unit needs, have been already satisfied. Right. It's 224 that have been done out of 516.
That's the total remaining, according to the table, that we have a total remaining RENA by income level of 292. So it would be 43% that we still need to
It's 292 units?
That's correct.
Okay, so where along in this annual report do we say how we're going to take care of these 292 units? Did I miss that?
No, I know it's a confusing thing. The requirement for the state is, in order to be consistent with the housing requirement and our housing element to be certified, we have to have property that is zoned for residential. And there is not a need for us to produce the units. The need is for the land to be available for a developer to come in and without having to do a zone change.
Okay, so and the general plan is taking that into account, and there is no need for zone changes today.
That is
to
correct. We are
accommodate
consistent.
this additional 292 units.
We have adequate property zoned.
Okay.
If people were to
Okay.
come in, they could easily do it.
That answers my question,
Okay.
and that makes a lot of sense now. The next question is regarding, I guess this is page 16, the sphere of influence, and I guess these are the all of the annexations, and much of the public does have a lot of opinion on all of these annexations, and this status or this annual report just tell us these are the annexations. Are they current? Is this actually what the plan is today? Is the Bailey Avenue corridor is still a viable plan, that it exists today, and is the Y is still a viable plan? So my question is, are we up to date in all of this?
This is exactly what the report is saying, that these are the two annexation projects that we currently have. The council directed that both of these would be considered as part of the general plan update. So what we're doing is, when we bring back our land use element, the question to the council is going to be, are these two annexations the direction that the council chooses to go? Now, the Bailey Avenue plan, because it is a specific plan, will come back, as will the Y project. They will come back as additional projects requesting council direction and agreement that for Bailey Avenue, that we approve the specific plan and that we approach LAFCO for an annexation. This is no way approves it. It simply says that we are going to go in that direction.
Okay. And the last question is on page 20. We are talking about Casa del Desarrollo and the proposed projects. There is 114 South K, Casa del Desarrollo, Lompoc Housing Community Development Corporation, and then there is 308 North K Street, Habitat Humanity. These are proposed projects. Are these considered to be part of the 46% that we need to take care of, or these are just, no, they don't have anything to do with complying with these other numbers?
That's correct.
Okay.
They're simply proposed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I have some comments, but let me hold them until after public comment.
Thank you.
Anyone on the public that would like to speak on this issue? Okay, no one rise. We'll bring it back to the council. Lucille, I have concern with filing this with the state with a number of practices that we've got in here that were recommended in the general plan 15 years ago that we say are tabled. I would like to see us at least amend the status column in some way to show that although the zoning ordinance hasn't been revised, we are implementing these through the development review process or whatever. Because right now it looks like we've taken no action on recommendations that were prepared 15 years ago. And that, as you briefed earlier, is not true. We are implementing them. So I would ask that the council approve this tonight with the changing of those words where it says that it's been tabled, because that isn't exactly the truth. And it could probably, it's the same words, it could probably be done with a global delete on a word processor and a global replace. Okay. With that, what are the wishes of the council? Any other comments, questions, or motion?
I would like to present a motion, Mayor, that we accept the staff annual report, the general plan annual report, and direct the Community Development Department to file said report with the amendment that the mayor has suggested. And that's it.
I second it.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. And that approved. The next item is another item that we're not going to spend any time on at all.
I heard that before.
Okay. Item 12, the staff has asked us to pull that one off and let them come back. Let them come back to us in the future. So we will honor the staff request. Move on to the next item. Written communications. None. Oral communications.
Mr. Mayor, do we need to take a formal action on item number 12?
No.
We don't. Okay, good.
No oral communications. Council Redevelopment Agency requests, comments, and meeting reports. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Is this less than $25, or do we need to report it as a gift? No.
Oh.
Just want to make sure that we are.
Cardboard fan cost $1.
Okay. It's $50.
It's also something from a federal government agency, and I don't believe that.
Oh, it's not a source of income? It's a gift, but don't.
From another federal agency.
But don't we have to report
this? Can't
this?
regulate. Okay. I do have a meeting to report. I did attend the American Public Power legislative rally last week. Very productive meetings with a number of our legislative representatives on issues that are very important to our power generation in California. Cap and trade, some of the energy bills, as well as the environmental bills in Washington, D.C. And that, Mr. Lingle.
Yeah, just one quick report. I did attend a meeting. It was not on the city dollar, but it was very rewarding. It was a meeting up in San Luis Obispo on small business development on the Central Coast. They had 4 speakers. 3 of them were small business owners that brought businesses from out of state to the Central Coast. And then they had a keynote speaker from Stanford University. The businesses were high-tech industries, but they were talking about the model, and the model made so much sense that they were talking about that afterwards I talked to the keynote speaker and I said, is this model, is it applicable to the wine industry? And he got real excited when he found out I was from Lompoc, and he said absolutely. He was complimenting the city of Lompoc for our progress in developing the wine industry here on the Central Coast, helping developing the wine industry on the Central Coast. And he also complimented us on our fine Pinot Noir. So I'm going to send him a bottle. But the main thing is, he said that we are going in the right direction by focusing on the wine industry here because it is a growing industry and we'll be rewarded richly by pursuing that. So Mr. Humdahl's comments earlier this morning or this evening were exactly right. So, yeah, it was this morning, yeah.
Yeah, I have, under council request, one last request, and that is with respect to the general plan coming up, we were going to set a date for the council to hear that. And have we done that? Exactly what will...
Mr. Mayor, the date is tentatively set for April 13th, pending confirmation with the consultant.
That is for the council to hear. Will the planning commission have heard the general plan before that? Come to us for recommendations?
This is a joint council and planning commission meeting to hear.
Okay, and they will hear it. They will approve. If they approve, they will recommend to us, and then we'll approve the general plan that night. Is that the schedule, or this is just to hear where we are now, or?
Yeah. This is just a review of the elements that are in phase 1.
Okay. Thank you. No other questions or comments at this time. We are adjourned.